Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, the president of Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. We are now in our fourth year of the podcast. My special guest today is Erwann, who is the MD of ebm-papst. Erwann, thank you. Welcome. Great to have you on the show. So how is it that you are the MD Japan for this company from Germany, as I understand it? How did you get to be in this role? What's your backstory here?
First of all, thanks a lot for coming to my office today. To start with, in fact, I would say that somehow I don't feel quite at ease to discuss about leadership in Japan through all my experience in Japan. What I mean is I have little experience outside of Japan. So it makes somehow for me a bit awkward to compare management leadership in Japan versus leadership outside Japan.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So you've grown up leading in Japan. That's quite unique in itself. So how did you wind up here in the first place? What brought you to Japan originally?
So I came at the late 80s. So it was the golden age of Japan.
Yeah.
It was just before the bubble broke. And everybody was talking about Toyota, Kaizen, Kanban. I'm an engineer. So after graduating in France, I am French. So after graduating in France, for me, USA has been, I was very wrong.
You're still doing reasonably okay. Right?
And so I saw the future is Japan. So for an engineer, yes, you have to understand Toyota's country. So I decided to come to Japan, and I had the opportunity to go through a master's degree at Japan University.
Oh, okay. Why was that? How did you get a Japanese government scholarship to come here and study? Were you a Monbusho? Like something?
I was Monbusho, yes.
Me too.
Okay.
I also did a master's degree here, thanks to Monbusho. So we have something in common there.
So yeah, it was without the Monbusho, it would have been just impossible. So for 2 years, I made a master's degree in applied mechanics. And after that, at that time, it was still compulsory in France to do your military service. And in place of military service, you had the opportunity to work for a French company abroad. So this is how I started my career here in Japan, working for a French company in place of a military service. It was a kind of civil service. So after that, I spent 2 years working for that company before they sent me back to Europe to learn, I would say, my job, as they would say. And I was supposed to be back to Japan after a few years. And 2 years later, the company decided to send me back to Thailand and say, come on, we discussed about Japan. I thought it was Tokyo or Osaka, and you're telling me it's Thailand. And at that time, you know, from I would say all the French company perspective, Japan was Asia was all the same.
Thailand, Tokyo, same thing.
Same. So eventually, it didn't work out, and I ended at the French embassy in Japan.
That's interesting. I worked in the Australian embassy, so we've got more and more in common here. Let's keep going with this, see how it goes.
And so I worked for the French embassy for 2 years before being called back by the same French company, find a position in Japan. So I started again for the French company, working in Japan that time. And I've been since that time in Japan. So altogether now it's 33 years.
33 years. Well, I'm 38, so we're similar there too. Over 30 years together, yeah. And so how many companies did you go through until you got to this company?
In fact, quite a bit, but I stayed in that French company, which is quite a big group. There were several activities and branches. In 2002, I started a position in a joint venture between that company and old traditional Japanese company. Before that French company decided to sell off the business globally to an American company for whom I worked for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Before coming back to the French company
Okay.
for the third time.
Okay. The same company.
The same company, different division.
Yes.
And that time they had also a joint venture
Yep.
with another traditional Japanese company, from whom I worked for 9 years. Before starting another position as a general manager for an activity, a different activity for the French company too, that I left beginning of last year.
Oh, so this is relatively recent to be
Yes.
in this company. So you've had a couple of interesting experiences there. I guess, you've been in the army, transferred to civilian work here in Japan, then you come back with the company, then they're going to send you to Thailand. I want to go to Thailand. I want to go to Tokyo. Okay, good. I'll join the embassy, and you go back into the French company. So at what point did you start leading people in Japan? I mean, you're an engineer. So at what point did you get a team that you're responsible for?
Was I would say 1 year after joining back after the French embassy.
And so that how big a size was that team?
Oh, it was a small team of 5 people.
Five
yes.
people, right?
Yes.
So you've been educated in France, you've spent time in Japan, you've got a master's degree here, work in the embassy. None of that is really preparing you for leading a team in Japan, I suppose, but
Absolutely not.
definitely not, right? So
Yeah.
what were things that when you started leading a team of, doesn't matter, it's 5 or 15, probably a lot of things are quite similar. What were some things that occurred to you that, oh, okay, this isn't quite going the way I thought it would go, or my assumption was this, but actually it turns out it's got to be like that, or my expectation was this, but in fact this turned out to be this way. What were some sort of differences you noticed in terms of what you were thinking of being a leader and what it turned out to be?
Yeah, it was not something that I could compare with leading in a foreign company or in a French company because I had little experience. So it was a pretty much an intuitive approach that I had. I am quite an intuitive person, and later on, in fact, much later on, I went through an MBA course, and after doing it, say, well, it would have been good if I could have such a course
earlier,
15 years or 20 years ago. It would have helped me a lot because, yes, at the very beginning, it's pretty tough to manage a team when you don't have.
Well, probably, again, MBA courses are basically designed for engineers, originally, right? They were engineers get into leadership positions and they know a lot about engineering and they don't know much else. And so it was to broaden out the spectrum. I mean, it's changed into something else now, but originally that was the idea. So it wouldn't have probably mattered too much if you'd been leading a French team as an engineer. You probably would have had exactly the same issues.
Yes.
Would have been the same, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking for what were things that were particular about Japan that maybe, by that time I'm sure you spoke Japanese, so it probably wasn't a linguistic problem. But what were some sort of things about leading a Japanese team which sort of struck you as, I'm French, but actually this is a little bit different from what I thought it would be. I'm looking for those sort of little snippets.
Okay, so typically the high type of answers that you get, which you assume at the beginning means a yes, and it's not a yes.
So at what point do you discover that hi actually doesn't mean yes, it means I'm listening to you, but that's about all? Because, we think, oh, okay, great, this is going to happen. We've had this discussion. This person said yes. I expect outcomes at a certain point in time. And then you realize, actually, nothing's happened. What's going on here?
Yeah.
How long did that penny drop?
Oh, it's pretty quick, I would say, that to start to understand that something wrong with that. I think it was faster dealing with customers than with the team. In that sense, going with customer and especially with foreign visitors, you go and visit customer when they always say yes, and you make a summary of the discussion. So you say yes, yes, yes. So it's a yes, and you say no.
Yeah, we're not doing it.
So no, but you said it was yes, yes all the way along, and so this is about the time I started to understand that meta language of the yes in Japan, which after also translated in my team to understand it's not only a meta language, but also when you push people, they don't want to go to the fighting. They don't want to confront, so usually they would say yes.
Now that's interesting, because I've been told by French people that a lot of the French business culture is combative. It's sort of a contest of ideas, and that people are quite vigorous in, debating ideas and having, they're okay with conflict, I guess. I'm not French, so I don't know. But
Yes.
that there is more of a combative element to decision-making in the French culture and education system. Critique is very important, debate is very important. So, you're coming out of that background, yet here it's quite the opposite. It's harmony, don't make waves, have two faces, keep everyone happy. So that must have been quite a contrast for you.
It was, especially also in terms of team management. French elite system is not much versed into team management or team building. It's much more focusing on individual and how to bring individual to a certain level, but know how to train the team to reach a certain level. So this is quite different from, I would say, other educational system.
And did you, as a result of that, I guess it's the sort of, these are my words, but it's sort of, the great man of the business, the great woman of the business, the hero of the business, smart, all-powerful, solve all the issues, drive everything. That's one model, right? In Japan, that's not going to happen. But did you then think, well, actually, I have a role here as a leader to educate my team. I have a role here as a leader to train my team, as opposed to following the French model. Did that thought occur to you, or did you keep trying to apply, I'll make myself better and somehow this will work? Well, how did you go on those potential alternatives there?
I think I went both ways.
Both ways, okay.
And especially when I first started in that joint venture, so somehow I was a representative of the French side versus the partner who were Japanese.
So you were like dual heads of the business? Like joint venture meant that both of you were the heads of that structure?
No, there was a president.
Okay, right.
A Japanese president, but coming from the French company. Very Japanese. So not much driving, I would say, the business. Much more laissez-faire type of people. So people from outside Japan usually would address directly to myself to try to understand what's happening in the company and try to push their idea into the Japanese business.
So on that point, we grow up in Western countries where the president is quite a powerful force and can often change the complete direction of companies. New CEO comes in and suddenly people are getting fired, people are getting hired, strategic directions change, a lot of activity, away we go. New broom comes in. What do you think it is about the Japanese system that the president, as you say, was not a driving force? So you have to ask yourself, all right, if the president's not the driving force, who's driving?
Who is driving?
So who's driving, Erwann?
So that was the issue.
No one's driving.
No, there was many people driving. So I was one driving force, and there was on the Japanese side other driving force. Of course, not driving in the same direction.
Small detail. Yeah, that's interesting. And like, for example, I imagine that there were probably, I'm guessing, more than two divisions, probably a number of division heads.
Yes.
And often in Japanese companies, the division heads have quite a lot of power. And it often seems like the president's role is to sort of harmonize these very ambitious, thrusting division heads and keep the whole thing together without it blowing up. But they have a lot of power. So are they the ones who are driving things? Is this how it works?
It should be, I think. It should be the way. In my experience, it was not...
Not like that?
It was not like that.
Okay.
It didn't end like that. So we continue fight for more than 1 year and a half, I would say. And eventually, the decision came from outside of Japan, so from Asia Pacific person to change the organization. So at that time I was still quite young, and I was pushing quite a lot. I thought we had the majority in the joint venture.
Ah, okay, that makes a big difference.
So I thought we have the majority. We are supposed to have the power, and they should go that way. I'm told to go that way, and if they want to go that way, they should go that way. So I was quite pushing, and pushing too much, obviously, and it didn't please to the partner. So at that time, in fact, there was sales general manager, and marketing general manager. I was in the position of marketing general manager, pushing, I would say, opposite direction of the sales general manager.
Oh, good. So marketing and sales are not working together either.
Yeah.
This is quite an interesting company.
So it was decided that the marketing would be part of the sales division.
Okay.
So I had to report to the guy I was fighting with for 1 year and a half.
Oh, that must have been fun.
So it was quite an experience, and I would say a very positive one.
Why? Why would you say it was positive?
A very positive one. It was not positive one at the time of announcement, as you can imagine. But as a result, it was very positive in that sense that it gave me a very good view of how a traditional Japanese company manage things. And from the time I started to report to that guy, he started to behave completely different.
Oh.
To be very supportive.
Once you became his report, he changed his attitude towards you.
Yes.
Interesting.
And he started to open all the doors of the companies that was shut to me. And I still remember a very one night when this all changed. In fact, we were trying to have some product from Europe, and we couldn't get the right answer, and he couldn't speak English, and he couldn't communicate with outside, so he relied completely on myself. By 8 o'clock, nobody was in the office, but he was still there.
Oh, yeah.
And asking me, did you have any answer? And I said, no, but I'm still trying to call, and
it's only noon or 1 o'clock or something in France at that time, right?
So I think that this is how somehow we started to bond also together. That he saw that I was still fighting for the company, and
it's you and me against headquarters.
Yes, somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
And started to order some pizza.
Oh.
So he couldn't help me, but he was caring.
Didn't bring any beers as well?
No
beers?
Not beers.
No beers, okay.
But this is a very, I would say, time that I think both of us understood that we were on the same boat and we were rowing in the same direction.
Right.
And this is after that the situation completely changed, and I started to see him supporting a lot.
So if we always like to have hindsight is a great thing. We can see the past with clarity, but knowing what you know now, if you were in that joint venture and, you've got these sort of struggles or possible struggles, potential struggles, would you have done differently the second time around with the knowledge you have today? Say there's suddenly another joint venture and it's going to be, a similar situation. At that time, you were pushing and the president's doing nothing and your marketing's fighting with sales and then you're fighting with this guy is getting nowhere. It's all this internal combustion, but nothing's happening. What would you have done differently a second time around? How would you have approached it?
Try to manage to have the solution coming from the team.
Oh, you would have tried to bottom it up?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think that's the only way that people are motivated by. They don't like to be told what to do.
Now,
at least from my experience.
No one likes being told what to do, except a lot of Japanese like to follow orders, so they take no accountability. But how would you have bottomed it up? What methodology would you have used to actually get the team engaged, to actually bottom it up and come up with their ideas, as opposed to you're saying, guys, gals, we got to go this way, which is a very typical Western way of doing things. Mm-hmm. How would you have actually got it to bottom up?
I try to assess, or try to have them assess what is the problem. Try them to understand why a Japanese company decided to go into a joint venture with a foreigner. What was not going right before, and what should be addressed, and try to have them giving some ideas.
I ask this question because a lot of leaders who are sent here run into the same problem. They come in, they get a list of things to do in Japan from headquarters, from the president. They're sent them to Japan, and they have an agenda. And then they get here and they start trying to execute on the agenda, and nothing happens. And next thing they've got people resisting, and there's fighting, and they're getting nowhere, and they're failing, and they're panicking, and it's all going badly. Yeah. It's because they don't have a view on how to get the people behind them. So what you're suggesting is have the team look at what the problem is and have the team look at the suggestions, how it might fix it, and then work together to come up with something that's going to be viable, right? So you, at some point, I guess, you got into a position of fairly substantial leadership yourself. At what stage was that in the Japan career? When did you start becoming the boss of something fairly major?
In fact, I had some in-between position as Asia Pacific.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So at some stage of my career, I was in charge of all the sales and marketing team for Asia Pacific.
Now that must have been interesting.
So that was very much interesting because Asia Pacific at that time was spanning between New Zealand to India.
Wow, big
including
territory.
China.
Big territory, wow.
So it was not also a big team, but it was about 70 team members. And that was a very interesting part of my career because dealing with people in China, India, Thailand or Japan.
Did you have Korea as well?
Completely, yes, Korea.
So, when you get that sort of mix, we do a lot of training, we do a lot of APAC training, and we have different representatives, Vietnamese, Indians, Indonesians, Thai, Filipinos, have the whole works, and the style is so different, the levels of English is also quite different, the mentality, the problems they've got are quite different, and so I enjoy those sessions because it gives me a bit of a view into their world, but you are running them, this is your team of 70 people, so did you find any things from the Japan side and how things are done in Japan to help you lead this Asia Pacific team, if I can call it that, APAC team, or did you find anything from the APAC side that helps you to do a better job in Japan? Were there any lessons either way there?
Well, a lesson from Japan definitely was helpful in that sense that avoid to be too much aggressive and watch and listen to people first before reacting. And definitely that was a strong point to be able to lead in such countries like in Thailand, for example.
They're very soft, aren't they?
Yes, very soft. And if you push, they would resign quite easily. And I learned also a lot from a country like like India, that is very, very aggressive style of self promotion. That if you put that Japanese team with Indian team in front of a US management, there is no way the Japanese team can manage.
No.
They will never be regarded as a viable team, which is a pity. But
well, as you say, that one point, how many billion Indians there are now, that competitive system. I mean, if they're in an international company, they're well educated, they've obviously done very well, they've pushed themselves up. I mean, the Japanese are very understated, aren't they?
Yes.
It's the complete opposite of
Completely
self-promotion and no
opposite, yes.
promotion. And so, faced with sitting in a room like this, the Japanese would be like wallflowers. There'd be no presence at all. The Indians would be over the top of them, because they're quite good talkers. Indians too. I think they're quite articulate, and their English, of course, much better. So, in terms of things you've done in Japan as a leader, you had your sort of APAC levels, but coming back to, say, leading a team in Japan, thinking back, what things have you found has worked well in your time in Japan to get the team engaged? And you talked before about how you would have changed your style to get people more bottom up, but talk more about other things that you would do besides that to get people engaged, to be really committed to the job. Now, companies do engagement surveys. I don't know if your companies did them.
Yes,
my companies did them.
we did
Japan always at the bottom, always last, and always a lot of, unhappy people in headquarters looking at this story. What are you doing over there? Look at these results. What's wrong with you?
I'm quite happy you are saying that, because that is my understanding also of the result in Asia Pacific, and we had also some survey in the past and also last year, and done by external consulting firm, and the result was exactly what you said, and that was my question to that consulting company. My experience is that in Asia Pacific, and especially in Japan, they will never tick 8 or 9 or 10. They will tick 5 or 6 in the middle. Exactly. And the answer was no. My understanding is there is no such trend that we can see. So I was pretty shocked.
That sounds like absolute rubbish to me, to be honest. I mean, every survey I've ever seen, they say in the luxury goods business, because they do customer surveys when they lead the boutique. This is luxury. This is people with money, right? Yeah. And the Japan surveys are so low that to get any sort of comparison with other, boutiques around the world, Paris, London, New York, whatever, LA, they have to add 30% to the scores to get any sort of equivalency, because the Japanese scores are so low. A Japanese really happy customer gives a 5, And I often question those surveys too, because, and I don't know if you've had a good look. If you haven't, go back and have a good look at the questions and check 2 things. Check the translation very carefully on how it's been translated, because often that has an impact on the nuance of the meaning. Yeah. And secondly, have a look at some of the questions they ask, because ask the survey company, what are the key questions that you're looking at the scores for regarding engagement? And one typical one is, Erwann, would you recommend this company to your friends and family? Yeah. No Japanese is going to do that, because they don't want to take that accountability and responsibility, and they're not going to give it a big score. And so, they're not engaged. They wouldn't recommend the company, So I often think there's some cultural barriers to those survey questions, and also the translations sometimes are not helpful. But I don't worry. We are another point of similarity between you and I. We both suffer from these surveys, but I'll just put the surveys to the side and think about. Often people say the Japanese teams are very loyal, and they work hard. They work long hours. So there's loyal, work hard, long hours. And I often say, how do you balance that against? You say they're not engaged. They're working incredibly long hours, and they hardly don't take any damn leave. you've got to force them to take their leave. They keep working through all their leave. They lose most of their leave every year. And you tell me they're not engaged. So, what is it here? If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. But, just in terms of getting people more engaged, what have you found works?
Okay. Maybe just one comment on what you just said about the engagement and poor result in such survey. In my previous companies, I had this experience, in fact, where we had pretty much engaged salespeople. They were really believing in the product they were selling. They were really believing that what they were doing was helpful for the society. It was not for the company. It was really a higher, I would say, purpose that they had, and this what motivated them. So they were very much engaged, but not engaged toward the management. So you had in such survey bad results, which didn't mean that they were not engaged toward the activity of selling they were doing on the day-to-day.
So what was is this an issue of maybe the leadership that they were receiving from their point of view wasn't doing a good job? And if, maybe the leaders weren't well trained and they didn't know how to treat the people correctly, or was it just a case of everyone bitching about the boss? I mean, where are we here?
No, I think they were not happy at that time with the direction taken by the company. Mm-hmm. That was a result of.
And then again, these things about the direction of the company. Often this is the why part is often in Japanese companies not particularly well explained. That we're going to do this. Yeah. And that's it, why are we going to do this? And what's the rationale for this? And why is this good? And why is this better than doing that or something else? Often that whole conversation is just not there. So people don't have much context to go on. All they see is the change, or they see a particular direction. From their point of view, it's like, well, this is going to hurt customers, or this is going to make my job more difficult because it's going to make tension with the customer, or I'm going to be putting the price up with the customer and they don't like that. And, I'm thinking of the long term with the customer, and the company's anything about the short term, and all this sort of stuff goes on, right? So what do you think? What's driving that?
Well, as you said, I mean, the explanation of the why is a key. Explanation also of what I said, a higher purpose of what we are doing. I think it's very much important to get that engagement of the salespeople. That knowledge of the gap between, I would say, day-to-day engagement and the survey that I had in my previous company helps me also here and present to increase the engagement of the team by reinforcing this higher purpose that we are doing. And this is also the purpose that brought me into this company.
Because often I think as busy leaders, we get sucked up into the what, and sometimes we might talk about the how, but often we think that the why is a given. Everyone knows what the why is, so you don't need to tell them, right? But as you say, that could be a bit of a delusion on our part. What about getting ideas, getting creativity from people? What have you found works well for that?
Well, I've been in general management position only with small teams. So my previous job was 20 people. Here we are 13 people. So it's quite a human size team. So I would say it's not so difficult as a huge compared to a huge organization to get to know the people and to get the people to trust you. So to come to have the people to speak out first, to give ideas. They need to speak out, and to speak out they need to trust you.
Well, often on that point, as you're a well-educated international business person with a lot of experience, and when you come to particularly a new company, you've got a lot of ideas. You've tried a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things. You've been looking at APAC and seeing how they do things in Korea and how they do things in Thailand and where Australia or New Zealand or wherever, right? So you've got a lot of information here. And often when we're in those positions, we can easily become the sole source of ideas because we got a lot of ideas, right? And sometimes it's hard to remember that actually I have to shut up and not be the main source of ideas and try and get ideas out of this team. So what have you found works well to do that?
Yeah, this come back to my first experience, what I was saying, to have the people to bring their analysis on the situation so that they bring their own solution afterwards. I think this is the best way to have then the team follow their own, this is their decision, so they will follow. So this is what I'm still doing. Do
you have any particular brainstorming techniques, any creativity techniques that you use? Is there any sort of structure, or, I mean, what do? You get them in a room like this and get out the whiteboard marker, or how do you do it?
Basically, I don't want to get involved in that.
Ah, okay.
So
why is that?
Because I do believe that if I am directly in the room, people will not freely, completely open up.
Is that because you've only been here a short time? I mean, would that have been the case in the other companies as well?
Yeah, I think once there is some kind of hierarchy, differences, it's more difficult to have people to brainstorm. So I had some how could I say, to get some ideas of path we can work on. I did some brainstorm with the team, but how to solve the problem that they have chosen to tackle. Usually I would let them work by themselves. I created some small, what we call bottom-up project. So the team decide the project or the point they want to address. It is their own project. They work together. Usually it's different people coming from different perspectives, so some customer service, sales, or warehouse people. And I just let them to brainstorm, and they meet on a regular basis. And just end of this week, we will have some presentation of the three projects. So 3 teams will present their output and how they want to manage or tackle one specific problem.
So 3 teams on the one problem?
3 teams on different problems.
Oh, different problems. Okay,
yes.
Right.
So right. There is no competition.
Right.
And I did it in the past, and it proved quite effective way. And, then the point after is to accept the decision. So, well, of course,
And that can be tricky.
In between, I'm asking a question in which direction it's going to be sure it's not going completely in a way that I wouldn't agree at the end. So I definitely want to be able to agree on the decision that they will make to be sure that it will be done.
That also comes down, you talked before about people feeling free to speak up, which comes back to trust, doesn't it? So in terms of building trust, what have you seen works well in Japan to build trust?
Well, to be true to what you are saying, and well, in Japan you say always honne and tatemae.
Honne being the actual truth and tatemae being the public truth.
Yeah. But when you're in a leading position, I think you need to talk on a honne, and people will very easily feel at the end if you are true to what you are saying or not. So.
And how do they come to that conclusion? What things would draw them to come to that idea that what you are saying is true? Is it around things like consistency? Is it fairness? Is it openness? Is it transparency? There are many aspects.
Well, transparency is very important. I think everywhere, but in Japan, definitely people want to see that transparency.
Now, I don't know about much about the French, culture, but I'm Australian, so Anglo-Saxon, and you often hear, French have got a bit of a Latin temperament, can be quite excitable, temper and this sort of stuff. I've got no idea if that's true or not. But I'm guessing that...
Some of us, yes.
Some, yeah. I'm guessing that, you don't see too much of that in Japan, so it's very calm and moderate here. So I'm guessing that part of building that trust is not to have explosions of temper or, being upset with something or scolding someone for screwing something up or whatever. I guess that's part of being a known quantity, that you know what you're getting.
Yeah, that's pretty true, yes. And it reminds me one situation, when Japanese feel embarrassed, quite often they are smiling or laughing, I would say. I remember one general manager in Asia Pacific, he didn't understand that cultural aspect, and the situation was bad, and he was scolding people, and people, the more they were scolded, the more they were smiling and laughing, and he thought they was just making fun, and
they weren't taking it seriously.
Yes,
right,
and it just escalated.
I can imagine. And Japan's not the only culture in Asia Pacific which has that either. I just say there's some soft cultures here that, I'm sure if it screws up in Philippines or Thailand or, maybe Kampuchea or Cambodia, wherever, you're probably going to have a similar type of facial expression, which is not really what they're thinking, but it's what they're showing. So it can be misinterpreted. In terms of, we think about culture, like you basically have an umbrella culture for the whole organization. And then you have that culture as it's applied in Japan with the Japanese culture. So you come into this company, how long have you been here now? You said a year and something?
Well, 1.5 years.
1.5 years, right? So you want to have some, I guess, I'm presuming this, you want to have some imprint onto the culture here in Japan of this company based on what you believe would be the best for the company, the best for the people, the best for the future direction, best for the results, right? So how do you go about driving a culture in Japan? What works well to do that?
I don't have the magic answer. I know how I reacted in the past. Looking at my experience with my previous managers and leaders, and I assume other people would behave like me, which is maybe a wrong assumption, but this is how I am doing and how I am thinking. And I've been trying this, and it's not working so bad, I believe.
So what do you mean by that, though? When people react as a human just like me, what does that mean?
This is what I was explaining you about having a higher purpose in what you are doing.
Okay.
And I'm pretty much involved into environment, energy conservation, carbon neutrality, which is a hot topic nowadays everywhere, but also in Japan. And this is what I was doing for the past 10 years. And this is what I'm doing here in this company, because we have a very strong position to be able to help Japan. And to reinforce, I would say, this position, this strength that we have, that we are not just selling product, and we just don't want only to grow for having a higher turnover, that everything that we are doing has some positive impact in the environment, in the country, that benefit to eventually everybody working in that company, but also their kids. It is something that is very, I would say, has a strong power to mobilize and motivate the people. And relating all our activities towards this final objective is a way to, I would say, drive this culture. We've got a weekly meeting because we've got a small team, so to exchange on what have been done and what should be done. And I try always to relate with that final objective.
Now, is that something that's coming out of headquarters globally, or is that you?
I would say both. It's coming first from me, because this is what has been driving me for many years, but it is also the purpose nowadays of the
aligned
company.
With headquarters.
So we were quite aligned, and this is why I joined, in fact, that company, because there was very good alignment with my personal belief and the company's belief.
So if you think about if someone, a friend of yours or acquaintance of yours, rang you and said, Erwann, I've been given this job to run the organization in Japan, and they're going to send me out to Tokyo very soon. What do I need to do in Japan to be successful? What sort of advice would you give them?
Yes, so many type of advice I could think, or just one to feel things by himself. But as I said at the very beginning, to be aware of the high. So this is the first thing that I think any foreigner would be trapped with when they hear yes.
Hi means I'm listening, not I agree.
It's a yes, and don't read too many books.
Okay.
So sorry.
I'm writing these books here. Shocking statement for the author.
Let me let me rephrase it. I think Japan is changing a lot. Japan is changing a lot, and the way you're doing podcasts is very good to keep up to date with the changing of Japan. There are many books that have been written for years on Japan, for 30 years, 20 years. And I'm not sure at all that what was written 20 years ago applies to Japan today.
Well, it's interesting, I've written maybe 7 books now, right? And the first one I wrote was called Japan Sales Mastery. And in the process of writing that book, I realized, and I published that back in about 2018-19. Okay, so that's 4 or 5 years ago now. At that time, there were very few books on Japan which were current. As you say, they're all like 20, 30 years ago. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. But as we know, bubble economy, Japan crashes, China takes off. So Japan got we talk about Japan passing Japan got forgotten.
Yeah.
No one's writing about it anymore because it wasn't sort of relevant. China's the new beacon. So when I wrote that book, I realized, wow, the last book I found was actually by accident, had been written by another Australian, was called The Japanese Negotiator. And that was published back in about 1980s, late 80s. I was like, wow, that's 30 odd years ago. So you're right. There hasn't, I think it's changed. I see a few books coming out lately, a few, not that many. I'm producing a few myself, of course, but yeah, Japan sort of wasn't really a subject matter for a while there. I think it's coming back a little bit. So you're right. A lot of the stuff that people are reading. I had an interview with Petra Farr from IKEA, and she was mentioning some books because she's fairly new to Japan, that she was reading. And I said, Petra, God, that book's like ancient. That's like 30, 40 years ago that book was published, And I'd written a book on Japan Business Mastery to try and bridge the gap between what we'd had 20 or 30 years ago and what's going on today. And actually I sent her a copy of the book. I gave her a copy of the book because it's a bit more up to date. But you're right, there's a big gap between what was written then and where we are today. So they should read my book, I think, what they should read. Read something that's published more recently, and don't bother with all that other stuff because it is out of date, really. Yeah.
And you have seen, especially over the past 3-4 years with COVID.
Yeah.
I think Japan has
changed a lot.
Yes. And the way you were doing business 3 years ago is, having a meeting through web meeting with a customer.
Unthinkable.
Unthinkable. Three years ago, and now. Okay.
Well, I was going to do another version, an updated version of my book on Japan Sales Mastery, because that book was published before COVID. So there's nothing in that book about doing online sales meetings, nothing. But we sort of come back full circle now. We're sort of all going back to face. I'm not sure I worry about it, but yeah, that just didn't exist. The concept that you could actually sell something online was impossible.
Yeah, face-to-face is important. Web meeting will not erase face-to-face meetings, will not replace. But 3 years ago, if you had to go back to go to Hokkaido or Kyushu for 30 minutes meeting, you would do it.
Yeah.
Today,
let's get on Zoom or something and have the meeting. Yeah, it's changed.
With meeting, and customer would understand that.
Yeah. They're open to it. Yeah. What would be some other advice you'd give someone who's being sent out here to run the operation? Talk about don't take hi, meaning yes. Don't read books that are 34 years out of date.
Yes.
What else?
Care for people.
Care for people. What does that mean?
Yeah. Nowadays it's tough to recruit people.
Yes, absolutely.
I've been facing this, and it is tough. It is tough to retain the people because it's easier for them to move. Lifetime employment, I think, is something gone. This is what you would read in all those books, but I think lifetime employment in Japan is something of the past.
And I think particularly too with engineers. I won't say the company, but there's a very large foreign company here, and I was talking to their HR people, and they were talking about they were losing engineers, but they weren't losing them to their industry competitors. They were losing them to other industries, which for them was quite shocking, that this is how the demand is so high that engineers are capable of moving across industries, even though they may have spent a number of years in one particular industry, they go on to another one. So, yeah, it's quite hard to hold people competitive. So that's what you mean by taking care of people.
Yes. If you want to recruit and to keep them, if you recruit them, you want to keep them. And you need to take good care of
what does taking good care of them mean, though, in practicality? If this person's arriving in Japan, what should they do that would be recognized by the Japanese side as taking good care of them?
Typically, in the French, I would say, France has been plagued with unemployment for the past 30 years. It's getting much better now, but for the past 30 years. So the French company could hire anybody.
Mm.
And I don't think they were sometimes very tough on people.
Mm.
And okay, you lose one person, and
no problem. We just plug in another one.
You've got hundreds queuing, so it's not so important. And if you can gain some few percent in your operating profit, so in today's Japan, I think you have to be to invest in your people, to invest into training, to invest into salary. Japan has been losing their, I would say, understanding on inflation for the past 30 years, and now they wake up to high inflation, and you have to be reactive on that. Otherwise, people will move.
And they've got options and they've got choices today. A lot of them too.
They've got a lot of options, and it's not going to change in the foreseeable future. So.
I know. I was interviewing a young woman. She's quite, mid-20s, just come back from the States. Basically, she had no particular experience, nothing exceptional in her resume. I mean, I wasn't going to hire her, but she told me, I've got 2 other offers from Japanese companies. And I thought, wow. So, Japanese companies are also looking for these English speakers because often they're globalizing. Yeah. They're prepared to take her on and train her, even though she's a bit of a blank in terms of her, career experience, and probably pay her pretty well for the pleasure of having her on board. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I'm not going to hire her because she just doesn't bring anything to the party. But that was a couple of years ago. So what about today? You may not have that many choices when you're hiring people. You have to bite the bullet and spend the money and get them on board and train them.
And be quick to make your mind, to make your decision. Yeah.
Yes, that's true too.
But yes, English-speaking people are much tougher to find today than 30 years ago. Strangely enough.
Much tougher, yeah. That's true.
As you said, this blank of Japan for the past 15 years maybe, when China was rising and people forgot about Japan. The Japanese also tend to stay within Japan, and less company to send their young.
I think Lehman shock had a big impact there, that companies stopped sending people overseas for education. Families stopped sending kids overseas for education, and so the sort of supply has really shrunk. Although the Japanese government's saying that by 2033, they're hoping to have 150,000 Japanese students studying 3-4-year degrees outside of Japan. That's a big number by 2033, 10 years' time. So, maybe in 10 years' time we'll have a lot more English-speaking, internationalized Japanese to choose from. But at the moment, it's pretty tough. Yeah. It's pretty tough.
But anyway, the total workforce.
It's shrinking as well.
It's shrinking.
Yeah,
so by what do they say? In 2040, there would be 40 million people lacking Japan. So so it's no way.
So, if you're going to think about your definition of leadership, Erwann, what would that be?
I think you have to be true to yourself and to your team, and enjoy doing what you are doing. I think, and this is what you find in entrepreneur. I mean, entrepreneur are people who are that idea, and this is kicking them every morning, and they pull the whole team. And it's not a question of techniques. It's not a question, of course, techniques helps you. Doing some MBA, reading books, getting some experience from peers helps you, but you need this little flame that people will believe in you. And if you don't have, I would say it's like playing an instrument. You can be virtuose and play very well. If the instrument is not tuned, people will not like to listen to it. So you need the techniques, but you need also the tune, and you need to be tuned to it.
Well, on that note, Thank you very much. It's been great to speak with you. Thank you, Erwann. So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.